All reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here. From the Q Research Board's bread number 29,210 to number 29,213. President Trump attends Army-Navy game in Baltimore. President Donald Trump attended the 126th Army-Navy football game in Baltimore. Video shows him on site for the annual rivalry that also carries major symbolism for the U.S. military and the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. Security was elevated around the stadium, and there were reports of planned protests outside the venue. The game remains one of the biggest yearly public events tied to the service academies, drawing national attention well beyond sports. Trump speaks before departure for Army-Navy. Before leaving Washington for Baltimore, President Trump spoke briefly to reporters and avoided publicly choosing a side between Army and Navy. The Commander-in-Chief traditionally attends or acknowledges the game because it highlights military service, leadership, and the Academy's role in training future officers. The White House framed the appearance as part of the president's weekend schedule and public engagement with the armed forces. United flight returns to Dulles after engine failure. United Airlines Flight 803, a Boeing 777 bound for Tokyo, experienced an engine failure shortly after takeoff from Washington Dulles. The aircraft circled and returned safely, and there were no reported injuries. Officials said brush near the runway caught fire during the incident and was quickly extinguished. The FAA confirmed it is investigating, and United said it arranged a replacement aircraft for passengers to continue the trip. Dulles operations. Impacted after incident. The United 803 incident caused visible smoke near the airfield and temporarily disrupted some airport operations. Authorities said emergency crews responded quickly and contained the small brush fire. Officials also cautioned against early social media rumors and emphasized that incident details should come from the airline and investigators. The FAA investigation will focus on the engine issue and any contributing factors during takeoff. Active shooter situation near Brown University. Brown University issued emergency alerts about an active shooter situation near campus facilities. Police said multiple people were shot, and early reports included conflicting information about whether a suspect was in custody. As of late Saturday, multiple outlets reported the suspect had not been detained, and a shelter-in-place order was in effect while law enforcement searched the area. Conflicting early reports in Brown incident. In the Brown University case, officials initially circulated information suggesting a custody situation, then corrected it. This kind of confusion is common in fast-moving incidents where dispatch traffic, eyewitness accounts, and early briefings don't always match. Authorities urged people on campus and nearby to follow official alerts and avoid spreading unconfirmed claims while the scene is secured and information is verified. Point. Trump says he was briefed on Brown shooting. President Trump posted that he had been briefed on the shooting near Brown University and said federal support was involved. Public reporting indicated the FBI was on scene in coordination with local law enforcement. Officials emphasized the situation was still developing, with the priority on stopping further violence, securing buildings, treating victims, and locating the suspect or suspects. U.S. personnel ambushed in Syria. U.S. officials reported that 2 American soldiers and a civilian U.S. interpreter were killed in Syria during an ambush attributed to a likely ISIS gunman. Several others were wounded. Reports said the attacker was killed by partner forces after the incident. The case highlights the continuing risk to U.S. personnel operating in the region, even as the Islamic State's territorial control remains dismantled. Administration signals. Response after Syria attack. After the Syria ambush, President Trump said there would be serious consequences and indicated retaliation would follow. The Defense Department and regional commanders typically review force protection, mission posture, and intelligence after attacks like this. Public details remain limited in the early window, but officials confirmed American casualties and said allied or partner forces were involved in the immediate response. Border Enforcement Press Conference. border enforcement leaders, including Tom Homan and CBP Commissioner Scott, held a press conference addressing immigration enforcement and border policy. Homan repeated claims about large numbers of children being smuggled during the previous open border period, and he argued for stricter enforcement and faster removals. Officials framed their approach as restoring control of the border and increasing consequences for criminal smuggling networks. Department of Homeland Security reports sharp rise in assaults on ICE officers. The Department of Homeland Security published statements citing a very large percentage increase in assaults against ICE law enforcement compared to the prior year, based on a DHS-reported comparison window. DHS blamed hostile rhetoric and certain local policies, and it highlighted cases involving threats and assaults on officers. DHS ends TPS for Ethiopia. The U.S. government announced the termination of temporary protected status for Ethiopia, saying conditions no longer meet the legal standard for TPS. Reuters reported the termination decision on December 12, 2025, and USCIS posted official notices and effective dates. The move fits a broader tightening of immigration protections and has been part of a wider set of TPS rollbacks and legal fights over those decisions. Point. Bulgaria government resigns amid protest pressure. Reporting out of Europe said Bulgaria's government resigned following mass protests. Coverage also tied the political turmoil to continued disputes over governance and the country's path toward adopting the euro. When governments fall in parliamentary systems, the next steps can include coalition negotiations, caretaker governments, or elections, depending on constitutional procedures and whether a stable majority can be formed. Guantanamo Military Commission's activity. A Guantanamo Bay update noted prosecutors, defense lawyers, and multiple military judges gathering for proceedings. The military commission system has long faced delays tied to evidence rules, classified information disputes, and appeals. Observers watch these sessions closely because they shape how the U.S. handles high-profile terrorism cases, including questions about admissible evidence and long-term detention policy. Judge orders DOJ to return seized materials in Comey leak case. A federal judge ordered the Justice Department to return materials seized in a case involving a Comey-related media leak investigation, according to public reporting. The dispute centers on how investigators obtained and handled materials and whether the seizure met legal standards. Court fights over search scope and privilege are common in politically sensitive leak cases, and rulings like this can reshape what evidence prosecutors can use. Second, U.S. carrier presence in Western Pacific. U.S. Navy fleet tracking and reporting indicated that the U.S. had a second aircraft carrier presence in the Western Pacific. Such deployments are often read as deterrence messaging, reassurance to allies, and a response to regional pressure points. Carrier movements are also tied to maintenance cycles and readiness needs, so analysts typically watch for both the operational reason and the signaling effect. Point. Space Command move continues to Huntsville area. Reporting out of Alabama said U.S. Space Command's move to Redstone Arsenal is moving forward, with leadership describing the transition as underway. The relocation has major implications for personnel, contracting, and the local defense economy. Space Command's mission focus includes space domain awareness, protecting space-based infrastructure, and coordinating with partners in response to China and Russia's space capabilities. Geminid meteor shower peak. The Geminid meteor shower reached its peak window, and astronomy outlets promoted safe viewing tips and live stream options for people under clouds or heavy light pollution. The Geminids are among the strongest annual meteor showers, and viewing depends heavily on local sky conditions and moonlight. For many viewers, peak activity is best after midnight and before dawn, when the sky is darkest. Point. Comet 3. I/Atlas brightens. Astronomy coverage noted Comet 3, I/Atlas appearing brighter and changing in color as it approaches. Comet visibility can change quickly based on dust production, solar activity, and viewing geometry. Most observers rely on updated charts and verified Skywatcher reports to know whether a comet is visible with binoculars, small telescopes, or only imaging equipment. SpaceXFalconinestarlinklaunch. SpaceX targeted another Falcon 9 mission carrying 27 Starlink satellites to low Earth orbit. These launches are part of the company's ongoing build-out of broadband capacity, and they also provide frequent test and repeat experience for reuse and recovery operations. Typical coverage includes launch window timing, booster landing plans, and whether weather or range constraints could cause delays. Point. U.S. unseals warrant for seized tanker off Venezuela. The Justice Department said it unsealed a seizure warrant for the oil tanker MT Skipper, which the Coast Guard boarded and seized after it departed Venezuela. Reuters reported the seizure timing and court filings, and DOJ named the case as enforcement of sanctions and related legal authorities. Venezuela criticized the move, while U.S. officials framed it as sanctions enforcement and disruption of illicit oil networks. Venezuela opposition pushes for regime change. Venezuelan opposition messaging again focused on removing Nicolás Maduro from power, including statements by Maria Corina Machado. International reactions vary, but the U.S. has used sanctions and legal actions as pressure tools while also watching regional energy and migration impacts. The opposition's ability to translate statements into sustained political change remains constrained by state control of institutions and security forces. Point. Israel legalizes West Bank outposts. Reporting said Israel's cabinet approved legalizing 19 West Bank outposts, including sites previously evacuated during the 2005 disengagement period. These decisions have major implications for Israeli domestic politics, Palestinian territorial claims, and U.S. and European diplomacy. Outpost legalization is frequently criticized internationally and praised by settlement supporters, and it can affect security posture and future negotiation space. Federal Drug Administration considers black box warning for COVID vaccines. Reporting said the FDA intended to add a black box warning to COVID-19 vaccines, signaling heightened emphasis on specific risks. A black box warning is the strongest labeling warning used in U.S. drug regulation. Any change like this typically reflects a formal review of safety data and risk communication strategy. Point. DOJSUFULTONCOUNTYOVERLECTIONRECORDS. Reporting described a Justice Department lawsuit against Fulton County tied to 2020 election ballot records. Election record litigation often turns on retention rules, access, and whether officials complied with document requests and preservation standards. The legal process can move slowly, with early filings setting the scope and later discovery shaping what records are produced and under what protections. DOJ seeks to block Judge Boasberg contempt proceedings. Reporting said DOJ sought to stop Judge Boasberg from pursuing contempt hearings in a separate dispute. Contempt proceedings can raise high-stakes questions about compliance with court orders and the limits of judicial authority. Housing data shows cooling market signals. Housing coverage showed slowing year-over-year home price growth in widely watched indexes, and some trackers suggested softening or slight declines in certain measures, especially after adjusting for inflation. At the same time, new listings and supply conditions vary sharply by region. Mortgage rates, local job markets, and affordability remain the main drivers. Analysts are watching for whether the slowdown becomes broad-based or stays concentrated in specific metro areas. ICE operations draw protests near Minneapolis. Local reporting described ICE activity at a worksite near Minneapolis, followed by protests. In these situations, the key questions are what enforcement authority was used, whether the target was an individual arrest or a broader worksite action, and whether local officials were involved. DHS and ICE typically emphasize criminal histories and removal priorities, while local groups often challenge methods and demand transparency. That's all for now. Stay alert, stay informed, and never hand your thinking over to anyone on a screen, including me. God bless you, God bless our troops, and God bless the United States of America. See you soon.